I saw my grandpa. We talked for a while, and he said I could go back with him, or stay. I looked down and saw myself in that hospital bed with my brother holding my hand. He felt it turn cold, and I never saw him cry that way before. Went back into my body and felt more pain than I knew in my life. Been a year of recovery, and I lost most of my memory, but I'm happy. Skull fracture / traumatic brain injury from heat exhaustion. AskReddit. Redditors who have been clinically dead. What did you experience in death, if anything? I coded after surgery. I remember being able to see and hear everything and understand what was happening, but I couldn't physically feel anything. It was deeply unsettling. My heart also stopped after surgery 3 years ago. I only remember them getting me back and drifting between darkness and seeing the nurses panic. Like you mentioned, I felt nothing and was just an impartial observer. The aftermath was the worst. Realizing how close I was to oblivion and recalling the dissociation was horrifying. People often say, oh, I'm not worried, she's a fighter, when someone gets very ill. But me? I feel like I was just ready to watch myself fade into the dark despite being content and having things to live for. Unsettling is exactly the right word. That was the weird part for me too. The impartiality. It's like the emotional part of my brain stopped working before the intellectual part did. I basically was just patiently waiting to find out whether I was going to be dead or not. I had no feeling about it at all at the time. The unsettled feeling came later. My wife and I discussed this at length 4 years ago. She died twice in 3 months, needing full resuscitation both times. Both were lengthy rescues. One resuscitation was off and on for nearly 40 minutes. I asked her later, when she had recovered, if she remembered anything at all during the time she was clinically dead. She remembered nothing. Blackness. No light. No relatives and former pets waiting for her. Just black. Thankfully, also no pain. She finally passed 18 months ago, and I hope she felt no pain or worry the final time. I don't know what I experienced while I was dead, but when I woke back up, so to speak, I remember wanting to experience it permanently. See, I don't think I can really post my experience here, because I wasn't deemed clinically dead. But I did get hit by a car once, when I was about 13, and I will never forget the experience that came afterwards. I was biking when a lady hit me with her car. I had a moment prior to being hit where I knew it was going to happen, but it was far too late for me to actually do anything about it. I braced for impact, got hit, and went straight into this state of complete utter silence. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. No smells, no thoughts, no feelings. I just simply existed in this peaceful black bubble, and it was the most at peace I've ever been in my life. It felt like I had been there for hours honestly, but really it had only been a few seconds before I woke up and everything came back. The loud noises, the pain from being hit, seeing all the cars, etc. It's crazy though. It was one of the most amazing feelings I've ever experienced. A friend of mine described death. She was technically dead twice, as being surrounded by darkness and floating with some sort of warm gel-like substance covering her. She never wanted to leave that state. I died twice after I got MRSA into my heart area after a major surgery. I don't remember much of anything when I was out. Cliché as it was, I saw a light, but damn, that year sucked. When I was 15 I was scheduled to do a tilt table test. They lean you up at an angle on a table because I was consistently experiencing dizziness and fainting spells. After about 20 minutes the doctor tilted the table back and I could feel myself passing out. I got severe tunnel vision and lost like 95% of my eyesight, like looking through a straw, and then I blacked out. I remember hearing the doctor call the code and my father cussing at the doctor that he killed me. I remember hearing a lot of slamming and banging around, which I assumed was the crashed cart and nurses shoving into this small testing room. I felt a pressure on my chest, like when you have someone stand on your back to crack it, which I found out later was the nurses doing CPR. I saw an array of vivid colors kind of dancing around, forming objects in the dark. The scariest thing was how peaceful it felt. Just pure 100% peace. No panic, no pain, no sadness, nothing, just bliss. I coded for just under 2 minutes, and as soon as I came to and opened my eyes, I felt seriously angry and hostile. I started ripping off whatever I could get my hands on and yelling at the doctor to get me off the table. Clinically dead on 2 separate occasions. I didn't experience any visions or light, and I didn't feel anything at all. It was like a switch was flipped and my existence was just shut off. Coming back was another story. Slowly I was able to hear the voices of those around me fading in, and they slowly got louder until I was able to open my eyes. That's it. Nothing spectacular. 1 second you're here, 1 second you're not. I was electrocuted by about 13,800 volts. The doctors say it's likely the first hit stopped my heart and the second one started it, before I was pulled like a lifeless corpse to safety. I remember experiencing the darkest dark and the most silent silence. I ceased to care that I was dying. Time seemed to change. It could have been hours, it seemed. It was only about 30 seconds. I felt as though I was floating and floated toward something that I eventually realized was my body and reality. Upon joining with whatever it was I was floating towards, I became self-aware in my body and heard the electricity making horrible noises and knew I was in danger. From there it was a horribly painful experience where I lost most of my toes due to tissue death and had severe electrical burns on all 4 limbs. More surgeries than I care to count, and seeing the round bone ends of my toes that were freshly amputated still haunts me a little. I was dead for a very short period of time, like 30 seconds to a minute. There's a big misconception about it. It's not like sleeping at all. I'll try to explain. There's always a sort of white noise in the back of my mind. It quiets down when I sleep, but it's still there. I never noticed it before I died, but I do now. I don't want to romanticize death, but when I was out, it was like this perfect nothingness. And nothingness is so hard to imagine normally, but once you experience it, and they bring you back, part of you wishes you could have stayed. There's no positive feelings there, obviously, but it takes away everything bad too. All your stress, the nightmares, the troubles, all gone. Just nothing exists. It's beautiful in a way. I'm not suicidal at all, and hope to live the rest of a long and happy life. But I'm very much looking forward to a lack of consciousness when I do eventually pass again, and I can honestly say I don't fear death anymore. I know 3 people that have been clinically dead and have come back. What they described is something much different than what people are talking about here. They all said, if you paraphrase, that it feels as if you're passing out. Someone compared it to adding on whippets, nitrous oxide, a feeling of your conscience slowly getting focused into one point in the exact middle of your head, while your limbs lose feeling in a tingling, pleasant way, and then you lose consciousness. One girl said that when she came back into conscience she was hallucinating because she had no idea what was going on, and that she started dreaming of something safe, pointy her mother hugging her in a warm bed. Former co-worker of mine died during heart surgery. I think she was out for 90 seconds or close to it. She wasn't religious or anything. She said that she remembered being in the room and seeing her dead uncle and cousin standing at the far end of the room watching everything going on. Overdosed. Flatlined. Didn't see a damn thing. When they hit me with Narcan, I woke up really mad, ripping IV out of my arms, cursing out the poor, amazing staff who saved my life. Good times. 6 years ago now with all that shit behind me, luckily. This happened well before my GF and I got together, but she intentionally overdosed on methadone and was clinically dead briefly at the hospital. She said she could see the doctors and her husband in the room from above, and then she found herself in a meadow with her first boyfriend just talking like nothing had happened. Then she felt herself getting pulled out of there abruptly and suddenly sprang up with her eyes wide open, and she was back to life. Not really sure what happened, and it still freaks me out to this day. My daughter was 4 and developed pneumonia. Her breathing would stop in her sleep, so we took her into the emergency room. She was there for a total of 5 days. For the first 3 days her health kept deteriorating, and on the 3rd day my girlfriend got a call that her mother had collapsed and was taken to the hospital. She was without oxygen for 20 minutes and was declared brain dead. That night my daughter woke up and asked about grandma. No one had said anything to her or in the room with her. We asked her what did she mean. She told us that grandma came to her in a dream and said it's not your time yet. I'll go for you. Immediately the next day she was almost 100% better. Not me personally, but my grandmother, after giving birth to my uncle, was clinically dead for a bit. She told me that she felt herself rising out of her body and she ended up in the top corner of the room with a view over her bed and the doctor. It was then that she willed herself back to her body and was alive again. One of my old frat brothers was clinically dead for like 40 seconds because of Xanax. He said that he saw himself floating above his body in the hospital room. He said that he could see doctors and nurses working on him and family in the room. He said he slowly floated above the hospital and towards a light. He said the most peaceful feeling he has ever experienced washed over him. This is a person who has done meth and coke in college. He said it's almost impossible to describe the feeling with our vocabulary. He said it feels like a weight was lifted off you. He said he saw some long gone family in the light, but they told him it wasn't his time. He said he was angry because he felt so good, but floated back down to his body. I have no idea if he is telling the truth, but he is a trustworthy friend. He never used drugs again. I was 6 to 7 years old, and one day I got rushed to the hospital by my parents because they heard me breathing really loud and hard. The last thing I remembered were faces of the doctors and nurses above me while I was lying on my back. Then I flatlined. The weirdest unexplainable thing happened then and there. I suddenly could see the whole scene as a spectator, like I was a floating spirit in that room. I could see myself getting revived, saw my mom crying, and my dad comforting her. Then, I saw a white entity shaped like my body, falling through the ceiling and slowly, like a leaf on the wind, falling down to eventually land inside my body. That's when that experience ended. I was put in a medically induced coma, and I woke up after some days. I don't remember. I had stuff plugged into me, and fourth, red glowing elastic ring on my finger, etc. Anyway, I later mentioned to the doctors that I saw it all. I saw them using the defibrillators, my parents, etc. No one really believed me and told me that I was probably dreaming and biasing my memories due to watching TV, but I know what I saw.